So thank you for opening up your home and giving me an opportunity to see so many familiar faces and to meet some new people. I want to thank all of our elected officials for joining us. I have the privilege, like all the Maryland delegation does, to serve with really terrific people as partners at the state level. And I can't think of a better delegation representing this area and representing Montgomery County. And I feel really blessed to have the opportunity to work with them. Because, you know, at the end of the day, representing Montgomery County is a terrific thing because the citizens of Montgomery County really actually have good priorities and vote those priorities. And that's a very, very important thing. And it makes our job at the federal level a lot easier. So this is just a terrific delegation, and I'm really blessed to have them. And it's great to be with you all here this morning. And thanks for coming out for this nice, beautiful event in this beautiful home at a relatively early hour for political events. I've got 5 events today, so this is my first one getting started. And some of them are outside, some of them are inside, so it was like, what do I wear? It's going to be 100 degrees. So that's the challenges that people like Doug know of campaigning in the summer around Maryland. But it's great, because I do have a tough race, because my district is the most competitive district in all of Maryland. Last time we won by a very small margin. It was a tough year in Maryland, as most know. It was a tough year nationally for Democrats. And so I take my races very seriously, and we play to win. And people often ask me, you know, when we won in 2012 by a big margin, what did I learn? I said, you know, in hindsight, I didn't learn a lot. Where I really learned something is in 2014, where I won by a very small margin. And so one of the things I learned is that every vote counts. When you win by 20 points, you're like, you know, a couple thousand votes here or there, it didn't matter. But when you win by 1.5%, and you actually break it down to 1,500 or 2,000 people that made the difference, you realize every vote counts, and that's really my message. I think this election is a huge opportunity for Democrats. And the reason I say that is not from a policy perspective, because I've long believed, which is why I'm a Democrat, which is why I think everyone in this room is a Democrat, by the way, I have never really thought we have a policy problem. If you look at what's going on in the world, in our country and around the world, it's pretty obvious, at least to me, where things are going. Right? We face a lot of economic challenges based on changes in the world that have generally been pretty positive. I mean, interconnecting globally, opening up societies, right? Which really, if you think about it, across the last 3 or 4 decades, we've seen these trends of societies opening up and societies connected, right? That's been an enormously positive trend for the world. Billions of people have been lifted out of poverty. All this amazing innovation that has changed the face of our economy and changed our lives has really helped people in so many ways. But it's put a lot of challenges on us. It's put a lot of challenges on our economic opportunities, right? Never have Americans been more stressed. Recent data came out to suggest that if 60% of Americans experienced an unplanned for expense of $500 or more, they would not be able to handle it, right? So if you think about that, I mean, this is a really difficult economic environment that we're in. It's put tremendous strain on our resources, right? What's happening around the world with the growth of the population and the development of the world, it's constraining our resources, putting pressure on our environment, putting pressure on our climate. Think about what's happening internationally, some of the threats we're seeing. You know, it's fairly obvious how we should be positioning ourselves. And I think that positioning is very consistent with the Democratic platform. I mean, what is our response to the world that we see unfolding? Our response is to basically take a step back, invest in our country, which is why people like Aruna are so important in her job, you know, managing our transportation system, which is why I've become such a strong advocate for investing in our infrastructure. We should be investing in our people. We should be thinking about what was transformative 100 years ago, which is creating a K-12 educational track for everyone. And we should be saying it's now time to expand that from pre-K to post-college. Right? Pretty obvious response to the world. Again, in a world that's more connected and more complicated and where there's more innovation, it's fairly obvious investing in your country and investing in your people is the right response. Right? In a world that's being more connected globally, right, the proper response is to encourage open society, right? Encourage the spread of democracy, encourage an advancement of human rights, right? These are pretty obvious responses, and they're very, very consistent with the Democratic platform. The planet is clearly being stressed by all this growth, right? All this growth is a good thing. People being lifted out of poverty is a good thing. Do they consume more carbon as a result of that? Of course they do. Should we be responding to it? Of course we should. So the policy platform of the Democrats, right, has really, if objectively speaking, if you look at where the world is going, it's pretty obvious it's what we should be doing, particularly when you contrast it to our opponents. We want to invest less in the country, less in its people, become true isolationists, right? Not encourage open society, encourage enclosed societies, right? Which is why Great Britain's leaving the euro and things like that. It's happening all over the world. The problem we've had as Democrats is a political problem. We haven't had a policy problem. I mean, if we were in any kind of serious economic analysis of whose policy platform is better, we win hands down. But we have a political problem. And the political problem presents itself, obviously with President Obama, I think has been enormously successful, right? We've had the White House for 8 years, but we have a deep hole in the House. I serve in the House, the hole is deep, right? And unless, the way our government was designed, unless you can actually get some consensus in all the branches of government, you're not gonna have anything happen, right? The Senate's going back and forth. It's gonna be a very, very close race in the Senate. Unfortunately, this past week, a bunch of the races seem to be breaking towards the Republicans based on the most recent poll, right? And if you look at the governor's races, I mean, we saw it here in Maryland. The Republicans control an overwhelming majority of the state houses in the United States of America right now. So our problem has not been a policy problem, it's been a political problem, which is why I think this election is such an enormous opportunity for us. Because things are breaking our way on a macro basis. Things are breaking our way on a macro basis. And what we have to do is play it smart, right? We have to play it smart. We have to be focused with our message, focused with our voters, and actually try to accomplish things that really matter to our citizens, right? And one of the problems that I think was found as a party is we're a little too much of what I call the 1,000 flowers blooming. Like everyone has an issue that's important. And that's great. And our job as elected officials is to hear those issues and advance them for the good of our constituents. But at the end of the day, Americans are yearning for an economic strategy that will get back to us being a nation of opportunity and not what we're becoming, which is a nation of birthright. And if you really take a step back and think about what's going on in the country, that's the biggest economic problem right now. If you're not born in the right family or the right school district, right, or the right regional economy, if you're not born there, your opportunities are extraordinarily limited. And I see it in my district, right? I see the kids in Montgomery County who are really blessed to be born in a place where the schools are great and there's actually a fair number of jobs, right? And their parents are working. But I go to parts of my district where unemployment is much higher in the western part of the district. There's a lot of despair. And that's happening all around our country. And so we have to, as part of what I consider to be potentially a real wave election for Democrats, we have to make sure we stay focused on what the American people really need from their leaders, which is a strategy to create more opportunity for a broader number of Americans. And I think our platform is in line with that strategy, but we just have to make sure we talk to people about it. And that's why my background, as Aruna said, I do happen to be the only member of Congress who was the CEO of a publicly traded company, and I'm a Democrat. But most people would say, well, that person's obviously Republican, but I'm a Democrat. And I have spent my life in business, traveling around the country, traveling around the world, building businesses that I'm incredibly proud for, always voted the best places to work, we always offered great benefits. Now, I had the kind of business that we were positioned to do that, and it was smart business because it allowed us to attract a lot of talent. But I do understand how the private economy of the United States works. And I do believe our strategy at its core, which is investing in our country and investing in our people, is the right answer. It's almost unassailable that if you actually were thinking about what's going on in the world, thinking about our challenges as a nation, thinking about the competitiveness challenges we have, and thinking about the jobs and industries of the future and the threats that are coming, that we will obviously respond to. Climate change is a good example. We will obviously, as a country, respond to climate change. Obviously, in my opinion, because at some point it'll be unassailable to every American, and the threat will be so big. So the question is, do we respond in a smart way, where we can actually position the U.S. economy to be a leader? Or do we respond when it's almost too late and it has a massive economic shock to the system, right? Which I think it is. I think it's the #1 economic threat in the world across the next 20 or 30 years, right? And so these are the kind of things I spend my time talking about. And I think when you root it in the facts as opposed to rooting it in ideology, again, the problem with ideology is we all know people give you the answer before they hear the question. We never too much of that one. But if you actually sit down with colleagues, and I've proven this on a lot of my infrastructure initiatives, et cetera, on both sides of the aisle, and you try to get it down to the facts about what's really happening economically and propose solutions that are consistent with how the private economy works, I think you can make progress and do what we're here to do. But that's what I think the opportunity is for us as Democrats, because of what's happened on the Republican side, which is largely the implosion of the Republican Party. And they'll have some victories here and there because they may have some particularly good candidates, et cetera. But it's likely to be a wave election, in my opinion. We have to make sure it's so, right? Because as we saw last time, you know, the one thing that one of my pollsters told me last time was that the Ebola crisis, which is hard to, you know, because we've been so successful in dealing with that crisis largely in Africa, but the Ebola crisis, which largely hit 2 weeks before the last election, became the issue Americans cared more about of any issue since 9/11. Think about that. So these elections are unpredictable. You have to run through the finish line. The media cycle, the way it is, causes things to change pretty rapidly. You know, we feel like we have a good hand. I think we have a good hand, but we have to play it smart. But if we play it smart, this election can be our opportunity as a party to get our political capital back so we can actually start advancing this policy agenda that we have that really is the right answer for the country. And that's what I'm committed to do. And that's what I know you're all committed to do, which is why you're here at 9:30 in the morning on Saturday, coming to hear your member of Congress wax on about things, but at least you got to hear a really good time. There's no question in 2 years people will remember that more than what I said. But seriously, that's why you do this, and it really does matter. It really, really does matter. And people have been saying that for a long time. But if you think about what's at stake right now, think about what we could have as our president unless we do our job.
Oh, God.
Talk about closing societies, right? But it's a real, I mean, we've lived largely across the last several decades in a world where societies have increasingly opened up, which I fundamentally believe is incredibly positive for humankind. Incredibly positive. That doesn't mean it's always perfect, right? Progress is always going forward, stepping back, going forward, stepping back. It really matters what the trend line is. So opening up the societies has clearly caused some issues, but it's been enormously positive, right? As a country right now, we're at risk of joining a bunch of other places in the world that are making the wrong decision, which is to close their society, close their borders, change their orientation towards who's an American, change the definition of who's an American, make different decisions about opportunity for our citizens. This is really pretty darn consequential. Really consequential. So I really applaud what you do, and thank you for having me. God bless you all.